Hello everyone, it's Teferi07. Today we are playing Murktide Beans Brew. So at the moment of recording this and tweeting about this yesterday, I still haven't seen any Murktide list with the beans do well, and I'm really optimistic about this one. It's doing very well in the leagues for me. Excellent results. I think this is like very powerful list. It's very similar to some of the control lists with the beans I had previously on my channel, but Murktide, but this one is really built around Murktide and having a lot of spells, a lot of cheap spells like 8 cantrips, March of Otherworldly Light, Counterspell, also Force of Negations, very important to support Murktide and also protect your game plan of tapping out to play strong threats like Teferi, Beans, Murktide, whatever, and Force of Negations play a really large role in this one. Okay, so we have some Lórien Revealed. They're also like cantrips, very good in this, very good Murktide enablers, growing him very quickly in the early game. And I went with the 1 Timeless Dragon instead of 4th Lórien, just because of the white card count and having access to plane cycling when you're under the Blood Moon to get that basic planes can be pretty sweet. Also Timeless Dragon for 5 mana triggers the Beanstalk, which is pretty cool. So on the sideboard, I think this sideboard is really good. So this sideboard has been very useful in a large amount of matchups. We have Temporary Lockdown. This card is crazy against a lot of decks, like the food decks, Hammer Time decks, Scales. It is crazy against Scales. It is even good against those breach decks. It's just fantastic in so much matchups, but not every deck can play it. Even in this deck it's risky because you have the Beanstalks and you can exile your own Beanstalks with it, but it is kind of just too good to not have it in this type of build. Okay, Celestial Purge primarily for scam, but can be used in various red matchups playing a Blood Moon. Subtlety again for the scam, but also Titan and a lot of others. Really, Subtlety is very useful nowadays. Spreading Seas primarily for Titan and Tron. Dress Down, Spell Pierces, Chalice of the Void. Okay, that is classics. And yeah, so 2 Supreme Verdicts also in the main, because this is still a control list playing a lot of counter spells. Beanstalks try to outvalue your opponent, secure the mid game and late game. Solitude as your free removal, also free counters in Force of Negation. So a lot of free spells, a lot of cheap spells in this deck, a lot of cantripping going on. So one of my ideas in the last video for the Beanstalk was cascading into Beanstalk, which I already talked about before and tweeted about it in the last month. But my second idea for the Beanstalk deck, it's not just these cantrips enabling Murktide, but also contributing into finding the Beanstalk more consistent. So 8 cantrips and also other beans secure you of finding those beans in almost every game. So beans help dig for the second beans, but also the cantrips help dig for the first and the second and the third. And I think having so much cantrips, which also work well with the rest of your deck, is can be very good with beans. So still having more consistent access to the beans, that is like same philosophy as what you're doing with Cascade. So that's it. Other than that, usual stuff that you see in this type of decks. So let's go on to the gameplay and see how that went. Okay, I think this was match 1. Let me check out. Yeah, okay. Okay, so started off with a 1-lander, but with Consider, I think this is keepable. I play only 18 lands, but I have 3 Lórien Revealed and 1 Timeless Dragon. Okay, so I find my island no mana to play the Beanstalk at the moment. I was able to hold double Counterspell though. No third land for me. But opponent was playing mono blue, so I wasn't in that much hurry. I had double Solitude in my hand and double Counterspell. That can be pretty decent against a lot of decks. So opponent goes for a charm here, and I use my Counterspell because if I didn't, I would still be forced to discard a card, so I think that was fine. So find my Misty here. Really wanted that land, but I decided to hold the Counterspell for their turn. I'm not really in a hurry to play my beans. I was happy waiting for that 4th land, and now I was able to hold the Counterspell while playing the beans, and that is the situation I wanted to be in. So I counter their counter, resolve my beans, and now I have like Solitudes, Teferis, a lot of stuff. I go for Teferi first to get their Counterspell, and then resolve my Murktide, get the draw trigger, and play my 6/6 Murktide. It's not very easy for a mono blue deck to deal with it, but they had double Dismember and play this violence. So on my turn I had multiple options. I decided to go hard cast the Solitude. When they countered the first one, I decided to pitch cast a second Solitude, and but they had Subtlety, so pretty good hand for my opponent. But yeah, my hand was like too good in this situation. And they had also had a Force for my beans, but I had a Counterspell plus double Leyline in this situation. So yeah, this was too much, and now I had a Binding triggering the beans, exiling the Swilon, and yeah, now it's pretty much game over. So opponent really doesn't have almost any chance right now, but they decided to stay in game, try to top deck something. Of course, they don't know what my hand is, but yeah, this was so over. Yeah, just no chance for the opponent. I think they stayed in the game for another turn. I went hardcast a Solitude, getting 2 beans trigger, and they concede. So let's check out game 2. Okay, in the game 2, kept decent hand, a lot of counters and a Solitude. Teferi is also decent for the matchup, being a wild card to pitch the Solitude. Also they play a lot of counters, and bouncing the Swilon can be pretty sweet too. So they only had 1 untapped mana. I decided to go for the beans. They have the Force, but that is fine. 2 cards for my beans, I can accept that. And yeah, they also counter my Teferi, but now I had 3 Force of Negations in my hand, double Counterspell. That is a lot of counters, so I was very comfortable in a situation like this, just passing the turns and playing out my counters. I don't have a solution for Swilon at the moment because I don't have white card for Solitude, but still pretty good situation for me. Opponent now has the castle, so they went for the Scries. Didn't help them much. My hand was like really good. I decided to go for the beans. Opponent uses the counter, but now they're on 2 cards in hand and I'm on 7, or I will be on 7 on my turn. So of course I missed a lot of my land drops, but my hand is like really good against them. Okay, let's see the sideboard. I didn't feel like March is necessary, so I just removed those, and that's it. No big sideboards for this matchup. It's not really common matchup. This was popular like maybe half year ago or a few months ago. There were a few good results with this list, but didn't see it played for some time, definitely. Okay, so I didn't have anything to do for a lot of turns. I decided to go for the Solitude, and also protect it with Force of Negation, get Solitude on the field, and decided to go for another force, but they had the counter here, so they did actually bounce my Solitude in the end, but that was fine. I just replayed Solitude, and the opponent was on one card at the moment. They played a Subtlety to trade with Solitude, I guess, but in response I went to Binding, exile the Subtlety, get 3 damage through, and play my Murktide Regent as a 6/6. That's really hard, as we already saw in the last game. A very hard threat for them to deal with. They have Dismember, but that's not really a good solution for it, so yeah. Opponent with Borrower in the field and one card in hand really doesn't have any chance, and that is the game. Opponent scries and concedes. That is the match. So let's check out match 2. Okay, so match 2, pretty good hand for me. Preordain turn 1 into pretty good hand. Beanstalk turn 2 with double Solitude and Force of Negation for their turn. Have a lot of stuff going on here. So I decided to go for the beans immediately and kill their Asma. So I wasn't sure still if this was like a reanimator. Yeah, that is the most common deck that plays these cards in these colors. So I decided to go for their cookbooks, countered one of those and went for the Leyline Binding here. I was also like really close to hard casting the Solitude, but when they played the Manufacturer, I decided to go for the Solitude, immediately exile it, and the next turn I was able to go Murktide Regent, drawing a card from the beans, and Counterspell backup. That is always very strong plan. Opponent had a Saga, which means, yeah, my Counterspell won't be useful that much. And they also draw another Saga, which is pretty good and definitely a way to raise the Murktide Regent. I draw Lórien Revealed and decide to go for the attacks here. Basically deciding to definitely going for a Solitude hardcast to get rid of one of their constructs. Maybe it was better decision to stay back with the Murktide to prevent them from attacking. But I went for the Solitude, killed one of their constructs and let 5 damage from the other one. Now I decided to go for the Lórien Revealed hardcast, and yeah, I get the full domain previously. and draw a bunch of cards that are good cards, not useful on this turn though. So I didn't have much options right now but to just stay back with the Murktide and the Solitude and hopefully survive through their turn. They went for the double attack here, and Asmo wasn't able to do much, because if they use it on Solitude I gain 6 life. If they use it on a they need Murktide is a 7/7, so it doesn't work. And on my turn I played the double beans. I went for the binding, drawing 3 cards, killing one of the constructs, but didn't get a white card I needed for the Solitude, so I went for the Preordain trying to get it, but unfortunately didn't. I was unsuccessful. I wasn't able to cast the Solitude, and that was the game. Okay, so that's it. Let's check out the game 2. Okay, mulliganing to 6, pretty decent 6. Okay, let's see my sideboarding plan in this one. Okay, so I think with this deck trimming on cantrips will be usual thing to do. So trimming one, consider trimming one Preordain, 2 Force of Negations, I think, and 1 Murktide Regent. I think this will be like common stuff you will do here. Also Supreme Verdicts. And I got the Temporal Manipulation or Lockdown. Yeah, Temporary Lockdown. That is the card that is so good in this matchup. All against all full decks, against all Hammer Time decks, Scales, whatever. All of these decks just concede totally to the lockdown. Can't do much about it, except of course Haywire Might it. But yeah, you need to find that Haywire Might. And I have a lot of tools here to prevent opponents from doing that. Even if they get it, that will mostly be later in the game, and in the meantime you can get access to some tools to win anyway. Okay, so definitely trying to get that second white mana, just unbelievably, just wasn't able to find it. I get 2 islands, and at the moment I get the second plains, I definitely win the game. I clear their entire board, and I'm on 10 life, which is still pretty secure, but I decide to save my Teferi on life and pitch cast the Solitude here to get rid of the Asmo. They played the second one, so I think that was pretty decent play. They get another cookbook. They play the third cookbook. This means when I play my lockdown, I will be able to take care of most of their cookbooks, or maybe all of them. Yeah, so I couldn't let them resolve the manufacturer, so I was forced to deal with Goblin Engineer immediately, passing the turn, holding Counterspell plus Force of Negation, and finally drawing that white source I needed, going for the lockdown with the Counterspell backup, basically removing their entire board except these 3 lands. And yeah, this was like very easy game from this point. Very easy game for me. Opponent goes for Daredevil, Hardcast. I don't even let them that. So I find the Murktide, play my 7/7 Murktide, which ends the game in 3 turns, and having Counterspell backup and the Force of Negation backup, that is just too much. And yeah, so couple of attacks, also finding the Beanstalk in the meantime is not bad. So I go for the beans and find another Counterspell, and opponent scoops it up. So that is it. let's check out the game tree. Had to mulligan that one. Keeping again decent 6 with discard. Discard is so good in the matchups like this, and there is a lot of matchups like this one, really a lot of them. Okay, so yeah, I draw Murktide for a turn. Murktide in a situation like this is not going to be very fast, but definitely hard you want to draw. And as you can see before, I boarded one of the Murktides out. When I'm boarding some spells out, like especially cantrips, I'm counting on Murktide to be a bit slower, so I think I don't want to have more than 2. And definitely that Leyline Binding top deck was great to get rid of this engineer, because it's otherwise they would get manufacturer on the field, and that is a hard card to deal with. So very comfortable after this, just playing some of my spells all the time, just holding counters in either dress down or counterspell, whatever. So they go for Urza Saga token, and they go for another one, and I decide to go play my dress down immediately. They have also a lot of ATB creatures, so Asmo, Engineer, don't do anything. I was trying to find a removal here for the Havermite, and yeah, I decided to go for the cookbook counter, but they had the Springleaf Drum from the hand to get the greed mana with might and get rid of the temporary lockdown, which get them back cookbook plus Asmo. So obviously countering that cookbook didn't end up good for me, but at this point I had a lot of stuff going on, Murktide in hand and a counterspell. I just needed a removal for their Asmo to not be able to kill my Murktide for free. I play Murktide just to get the 2 cards, of course, and find that Solitude while holding counterspell on their turn. Solitude was really good here. Answer to Asmo, which also draws me 2 cards. That is all I could ask for. Opponent also just very low on time. So on my turn I go for the Solitude, exile Asmo, and very comfortable situation right now. Consider plus counterspell for their turn. Murktide on their next turn, possibly 8/8, drawing me 2 cards, and another Solitude that is just feels like too much. So opponent draws Saga for a turn, which is decent, but there is just not much they can do anymore. I go for the Consider, and then exile their Saga with March, make my 8/8 Murktide and attack with Solitude, still holding another Solitude for their turn, another Beans, and yeah, it is just too much. Okay, so that is the entire match against this food deck, and let's check out match 3. Sorry, this was a defeat, so we'll save this for the last, and we'll watch the match 4 first. Okay, so keeping one lander here, but with Lórien, that is actually very manageable, not a problem at all. I go for Breeding Pool to be able to cast my Beanstalk and also get the Hallowed Fountain. Opponent discards the Beanstalk, but still I'm good. I pass the turn holding the Counterspell, but also holding the Consider. I go for the Consider, finding another land. That is exactly what I needed, and yeah. So again, same situation, holding Consider, Counterspell, passing, and my opponent cycles the troll, which means they're definitely on mono black coffers. So they play the Urborg and pass the turn. I know they play Bowmasters and a Sheldred. I decide to take Beans to hand, but maybe that wasn't a great decision considering I know what cards they play. I had solutions for the Bowmasters and the Sheldred, so I think this was fine. Opponent plays Thoughtseize and gets rid of my Murktide. I had a bunch of cards that exile creatures and trigger Beans, but yeah, they don't play much of them. Just Bowmasters and Sheldreds. I think that's it, at least in the main. And I was able to cast the Murktide, trigger the Beans. So even if they kill it, I still get a draw. And they play Bowmasters in response. I decide to go for the Binding before the trigger from the Murktide. And I also do another trigger to kill the Orc army and find the fetch and play the Preordain, finding the Force of Negation. So I'm also safe at the moment from Ring or Karn or whatever, and they play that Ring, so getting that Solitude, getting that Orc with Solitude and the Preordain really paid off. That ended up being like definitely great play that made this game very easy for me. And then they went for the Sheldred. I had like Binding for that, and too much cards, too much value in hand, and the Beans on the field, and Murktide just creating excellent clock, and that is very easy win. So let's check out the game 2. Okay, so let's check out my sideboarding plan for the coffers. Actually, don't need really that much removal against coffers, so 2 Solitudes are going out, 2 March are going out. Still, I want to save some of those, definitely. And the Supreme Verdicts went out too. Okay, so my opponent has a Shadow of Doubt. I hate this card. It's so sweet when you play it, of course, but it can be really hard. You're just not counting that your opponent could possibly counter your fetch ability. Yeah. But I managed, even with the fetch counter. I got some lands from the top and I was still in a good shape. Opponent goes for the Karn. I have the Spell Pierce, I have Counterspell, a Lórien, Leyline Binding, so again pretty decent situation. I played the Raugrin Triome, pass the turn holding the Binding and the Murktide and the Counterspell, so pretty happy with this one. Okay, going for the fetch, and I think opponent went for the Cling to Dust. Yeah. So I played the Counterspell in response because I decided to cast Murktide anyway, so I wanted to make him as big as possible. I could even cycle the Lórien to make him a 7/7, but I kind of wanted to hardcast this Lórien. That was definitely the plan. Okay, so hardcasting the Lórien, getting 3 cards, getting the Beans is always good. Opponent goes Karn into finding 1 ring, but they're not able to play it on the same turn, which is pretty good news for me. And I also have the Binding to deal with the ring. So, force to hand, cast Binding, exile Karn, hold 3 mana to counter the ring, and then play Murktide on my turn. That is the plan. I was successful in doing this, so I went for Force of Negation, then cantrip with Consider, finding another island, and playing another Beans before casting the Murktide, get the maximum value out of it. drawing 2 cards while putting a 7/7 flying beater on the field is definitely insane. And now passing the turn with Counterspell, Force of Negation backup in my hand, this is definitely unbeatable. This deck just looks really powerful, having such a powerful beater and a threat in a control a deck like this one, which has a lot of counters. It's really hard to resolve the important spells, and it's really good at also finding this removal that is best in the format, like Leyline Binding. I think March of Otherworldly Light is at the moment like better than Prismatic Ending. I prefer it in a build like this when you're playing at instant speed everything. And yeah, they go for another Black March trying to kill my Murktide, but I have the counter and bunch of spells. On my turn I can choose between a binding or force of negation stuff. They went for the cling here, but I decided to force it and play the Solitude, getting obviously those triggers, but it doesn't really matter. I get rid of the Bowmasters, and then on my turn I have more beans, I have Teferi, lot of stuff there, which is unbeatable for my opponent's deck, and that is the game. And the match, that's it. Okay, let's check out the final win of this league. These control leagues are always lasting a bit longer. Obviously games are slower, they last more turns, and obviously for that reason always gameplay lasts longer. So my opponent went Halfling turn 1, probably meaning they're playing Yawgmoth. So I go for the Preordain, finding the beans, putting them on top. Beans can be great against them, but can also be mediocre sometimes if they have Bowmasters and I don't find a solution for it, which was maybe the case here. So opponent plays the Bowmasters in response to the Beanstalk, grows the Beanstalk, and then plays Yawgmoth, which is not a good situation for me considering I don't have any removal at the moment and had to go for Preordain to find something. I didn't get anything, just another land, and decided it's best just to concede immediately. I didn't have any tools to try to turn this around, and that was it. Okay, so game 2, again a one lander, but this time I have Lórien, I have Preordain, consider. Yeah, so finding that lands I need very easily. And yeah, opponent goes for Delighted Halfling. Obviously that is very good against Counterspell in my hand, and I decide to just get rid of the Halfling, Subtlety it, they bottom it, and yeah, so now holding Counterspell and Lórien Revealed. My opponent goes for another Halfling, but this time I decide to let it resolve because I had Supreme Verdict at this point in my hand, and I was really interested in like trying to utilize this Supreme Verdict to kill as much stuff as I can. Opponent goes for the Yawgmoth and goes for the Sheldred. So I was still thinking about options here. I could go for Verdict, obviously killing both Sheldred and Halfling, but I wanted to try to maybe utilize the Verdict even more and went for just Binding on this turn. So next turn opponent goes for Yawgmoth, and now there is just no more point in waiting. I didn't want to counterspell it. I just decided to go for the Verdict, kill both of their creatures and just pass the turn. Sorry, oh my god. I decided to go for the Solitude here, and opponent both Sages in response, getting back their Sheldred. So I was prolonging this verdict as much as I could, and I attack with Solitude first to gain life before the verdict. Opponent decides to block with Geist, which means my Supreme Verdict finishes both of their creatures. Unfortunately, they fetch is very good with Agatha, finding them a Dryad Arbor, and then pumping the Dryad with Agatha. Dryad becomes a real threat, of course. Opponent goes for Bowmasters in response to my Teferi, but I have a Counterspell for it. Finding that Temporary Lockdown, which is like really insane card. And now I had definitely some good stuff. Opponent plays Court, finding Orcish Bowmasters, finishing off my Teferi, but I had a Temporary Lockdown, exiling their entire board again, taking Agatha, taking everything except Dryad Arbor. Unfortunately, it is a land, so it's not affected. But Beanstalk on the field, binding in hand, this is like pretty good situation for me. Opponent plays Elven Chorus and now is on 0 cards in hand. So I go for the binding immediately, just get rid of that card, and on my turn Solitude this Dryad Arbor, again getting the draw I need, and the Force of Negation. Force of Negation is actually much better in Yawgmoth matchup that you would think at first. Okay, so again, similar to what you saw before, trimming one Consider, trimming one Preordain. Also, this is a Bowmaster matchup, so Beanstalk can, when you have a lot of them, it can be awkward if they have like multiple Bowmasters. So I sideboarded one of the beans out, one Timeless Dragon, also a frequent card to take out. I play second beans, attack the Grist, and just doing this top deck battles, but obviously in a situation like this, when you have two beans on the field, playing a mid-range deck like this one, I'm just in a huge favored position to win this over. And opponent decides not to jump but to let the Grist die. And I had the Force and the Subtlety for their turn. Also another Solitude on my turn, drawing me 2 cards, and this was game over, so yeah. I have a removal for Yag, I had counters to counter the Chord of Callings or whatever, Agathas, and Murktide here to try to win this game, finish this game as soon as possible, and that was it. Okay, so let's check out the game tree. Okay, again, what you saw before, a one lander, but I have a cantrip and I am playing on the draw, so I think this is pretty doable. I find a land I need and pass the turn. Okay, so I even get the third land I needed here, so Temple Garden. I wasn't unfortunately able to hold a Counterspell on this turn, which was very important turn because they played the Agatha. Agatha is very tricky card, hard to deal with. They were using it at the moment to just hate on my graveyard. So I play my Teferi, bounce the Agatha, getting that temporary lockdown. You already saw how good this card can be. Opponent plays the Agatha, exiles Ballista, killing my Teferi, and I pass the turn, holding a counterspell. I go for a temporary lockdown and get rid of this Agatha and Wall of Roots. Agatha is like really tricky card. You really want to get rid of this if you're able to do it. And opponent plays Yawgmoth and I go for Subtlety and they keep Yawgmoth on top. So next turn when they play it again, my plan is just to go for the Verdict. So that was basically just time walking them, getting another draw from the dress down, getting the Leyline Binding too. Okay, so I even had option to go Murktide Binding here, but I decided to go for the Verdict here first. Opponent then plays a Chord of Calling, getting Might. I think, yeah, I definitely should have gone for the Force of Negation here. I didn't want to lose my Murktide. Murktide is such a good threat, but I lost. They were able to get the Agatha back, and Agatha is like really powerful card. With the Yawgmoth on the field, yeah, I also completely forgot that they can like take the Havar Might and have mana with Wall of Roots on my turn, so I played this pretty badly and went for the Leyline Binding on my turn. I should have waited for them to, when they tap the Agatha, it will be very easy play taking their Agatha, but yeah, I didn't play this well and they went for the Might in response, sacking the Wall of Roots, and yeah, my plan didn't work out, so I went for the Murktide. That's always plan B and often the plan A. Murktide was just a 5/5 right now, but still pretty good threat. Opponent didn't have much. They of course had Yawgmoth in the graveyard, but just 2 cards on the field and 0 in their hand. They go for Chord, which was great with the Force of Negation in my hand, which was my only interaction at this point. And now I find the Preordain getting me the Solitude, so I was able to Solitude the Zulaport immediately, which was their only creature at the moment with just 1 card in their hand. And now they were on 13 life. I had 7 power on the field. That is 2 turn clock, so they need quick solutions, quick answers, and they get another land which fetches them the Dryad Arbor definitely, but still I have Murktide going for 4 damage here, so they just trade with Dryad Arbor for Solitude, which is fine by me. I pass the turn holding Subtlety, which is pretty decent card in the matchup, and opponent doesn't have anything and concedes. That is the game. Okay, so that is it. We can now go back to this defeat and watch that too. The only defeat in this league, which I was really impressed how this deck performed. Really liked it. And I think really it can be very powerful. So I think, yeah, it was this a scam. I think it was a scam. A scam is usually a favorable matchup for this type of decks. Not all of them obviously, but it wasn't a sun scam, sorry. Yeah. So I cycle my dragon, get the Hallowed Fountain and exile their Urza Saga with March, and still holding Counterspell. Very good situation, getting a Murktide with my cantrips. Yeah, this is just very good. I decide to go for the Murktide with the Counterspell backup without playing my Beanstalk. I think this time it was the Reanimator. Yeah. Yeah, so this game was very close to trophy, and since I played that saga, I thought like maybe there's some Rakdos saga deck going around that's very popular, but instead my opponent plays, look at this, they play Kragan with 5 cards in their hand. I can't imagine what were those 5 cards. Were they all just Yargles and Emrakuls or whatever? But they play Kragan with 5 cards in their hand and discard Yargle for 18 damage. I don't know, like to me that sounds pretty incredible, but my opponent done it and yeah, just one-shotted me with this single spell when I had almost lethal next turn, and yeah, so okay, it is what it is. Seemed like a pretty lucky shot from the opponent, but maybe they just had like hand full of Yargles and Emrakuls and it wasn't a lucky shot. Opponent starts off with a cookbook. I cantrip into another Triome and pass the turn, so now holding a Subtlety and a Solitude. So opponent goes for the Gorios on turn 2, but I have the Solitude, so it didn't really pay off for them. And on my turn I binding their discard outlet and pass the turn holding a Counterspell. I now decide to go for the Beanstalk and the opponent has Bowmasters in response, but I decide to use my Subtlety. Opponent also bottoms the Bowmasters and now it was again very comfortable situation for me. Opponent only 2 lands in the field, I have 5 mana and a Counterspell. They also don't have anything in their graveyard buried to reanimate at the moment. So I go for the Solitude to start attacking, pressuring somehow my opponent and drawing a card from the beans in the process. And then end of turn going for the second Solitude. They had the Bowmasters in response, killing one of my Solitudes, but this way I get to use the Solitude trigger to get rid of the Bowmasters, so it was still pretty good for me. Opponent, I get another trigger from Binding and pass the turn holding a Counterspell. So I counter their Fable and decide to go for the Lórien here and play my Murktide, getting another Bean trigger, putting 5/5 Murktide in the field just to have a bit better clock. I decide to use my counters on Fable and that was enough for the opponent, they concede. So let's check out the game 3. Again deciding game in this league for the only match that I lost. This loss in game 1 was pretty incredible. Losing to turn 4 Kragan, doing 18 damage to the face with 5 cards in their hand. I just wasn't... I thought like there's no chance opponent can do anything and they Kragan for 18. Well, that happens I guess, so yeah. This is what happened here. On my turn 3, I accidentally misclick and fail to find a land, and yeah, so I was annoyed by this and just quickly conceded the game. After that I wasn't able to deal with any of stuff my opponent played after this because of that land I missed. I wasn't able to play the beans on next turn, trying to dig for the solution for the Bowmasters on the field. So yeah, when I played this stuff 2 turns after, that was too late. Yeah, I basically lost 2 turns. I lost 2 turns by accidentally misclicking on that land and failing to find the land on my turn 2. And yeah, I continued playing a few more turns but quickly conceded on the next turn. And yeah, that was it. That was the entire league. That misclick in the last game costed me possible trophy match. Possible trophy with this deck in the first try, and as I said, I was like really impressed how well did this perform, and I was really happy with it. And I was not that happy with this one-off Timeless Dragon. I didn't really get to use it much, and would definitely consider some other options instead of this, but still it is a 5 mana card that can be cycled for to get that plains under the moon. It also can be played as a 5 mana beater that triggers the beans. I mean, it's a pretty decent card, but Lórien Revealed is definitely better. I still wanted to have that 1 white because of the Solitude white card count and ability to get that plains sometimes when it matters. Yeah, and that's it. So other than that, I think all the slots are pretty good. Absolutely no changes to the main and side. I'm very happy with it, and yeah, that is it for today. Maybe I would consider if just getting rid of Timeless Dragon to just add 19th land. I think that is or 4th Lórien. I think that is the more reasonable change if doing anything, and that is it. So again, thank you for watching. A friendly reminder to click like, click subscribe. Very interested to hear your experience playing this deck at your RCQ, FNM, whatever. Again, thanks for watching, and goodbye.